In this video, I'm going to grade every qualified NFL quarterback based on their 2021 regular season performance. What does qualified NFL quarterback mean? It means they had to have thrown at least 238 pass attempts on the season. So sorry Saints fans, but you had no QBs who qualified. Tough scene. The list will be in alphabetical order. Fair warning, I am a tough grader. Enjoy. Josh Allen, Buffalo. Allen didn't reach the same heights of his stellar 2020 season, but he proved that it wasn't a fluke either. This year he finished with over 4,400 yards and 36 passing touchdowns. He did throw 15 interceptions and had several ugly performances, but Allen is similar to John Elway in that you really have to watch him to understand how effective he is. He puts so much stress on a defense on every play with his arm talent and running ability. Buffalo is set at quarterback for the next 12 to 15 years. Grade B. Tom Brady, Tampa Bay. Brady was the MVP of 2021, mass volume player. He threw 719 times, so it's not a surprise he finished with over 5,300 yards, 43 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. It was a very good season, no doubt. But then again, he has arguably the easiest job in the league, and he should put up huge numbers in his situation. PFF and the like will champion his season as excellent, when to me, I see a very good year that saw him get outplayed by Stafford versus the Rams, underwhelm in wins versus New England, Philadelphia, and Indianapolis, throw a game-losing pick six versus New Orleans, play like crap in a loss versus Washington, and looked absolutely atrocious in a 9-0 home shutout loss versus the Saints. Please just retire already. Grade B. Teddy Bridgewater, Denver. 2021 was quintessential Teddy. He missed about 3.5 games and finished with modest numbers of 3,052 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. Denver went 7-7 in his 14 starts, dead average, which basically sums up who Teddy is. He had several great game manager performances against bad teams to juice his win totals while showing his and the team's limitations against better opponents. He also had a viral moment where he blatantly refused to tackle an opponent on a fumble return. Teddy B is loved for some reason by bloggers, but he's still best suited as a spot starter in my opinion. Grade D+. Joe Burrow, Cincinnati. Apologies are in order. I underrated Burrow based on his rookie year and early season performances this year, but he really started to shine like a first overall pick should towards the end of the year. There's no question the addition of Jamar Chase helped, and I'm still on the Herbert over Burrow bandwagon, but Burrow is good. He's still prone to bad interceptions though and takes too many sacks, which will hopefully force Cincinnati to focus on the offensive line in the upcoming draft. Grade B. Derek Carr, Las Vegas. Carr remains a major tease to me. He has moments in games where he looks like he belongs with the best of the best, but as 2021 showed, he also has prolonged stretches where he just isn't that effective for whatever reason. Just 23 touchdown passes in 17 starts is extremely underwhelming. He does deserve props for getting LV to the playoffs despite many distractions and tragedies that befell the Raiders season, but he has the arm talent to be so much better than he actually is. Grade C+. Kirk Cousins, Minnesota. Oh yes, baby, we did it again. Another year where Kirk Cousins put up amazing numbers, 33 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and a sparkling 103.1 rating, just to finish 8-8 in his 16 starts. It's really uncanny, the Kirk Cousins conundrum. People in 30 years who didn't watch him play are going to wonder why he wasn't more highly thought of. Like usual, Minnesota had several games this year like Cincinnati and Arizona where Kirk did his job and got let down by his teammates. But Kirk is also good for about 2 or 3 games each year where he just doesn't show up. I love Kirk Cousins and I hope he never retires just because he's such an anomaly when it comes to all of the all-time efficiency stats. Grade C+. Sam Darnold, Carolina. Sam Darnold still sucks, and it wasn't just because of Adam Gase, who also sucked to be fair. The last of the Darnold apologists are officially gone now after Darnold had another terrible injury-plagued season with a new team in Carolina. It started off promisingly enough with a 3-0 record, but quickly collapsed thereafter. Darnold really isn't good at anything, and I have no idea why he was ever so highly thought of in the first place. He's the type of quarterback who will continue to get chances though because he was a super high draft pick. Shame. Grade F. Justin Fields, Chicago. Let's just be honest, Justin Fields fucking stunk this year. Sure, he's a rookie and I'm giving him some slack, but for some reason a large portion of analysts out there are so desperate to confirm their draft priors that they overlook Fields' massive flaws. His physical gifts are obvious, but he has terrible pocket presence, his accuracy wanes, and he's already shown he's not very durable. He's basically the Ohio State version of Mitch Trubisky. I expect him to get better, not saying much, but it looks like Chicago has another QB bust on their hands. Grade F. Jimmy Garoppolo, San Francisco. Jimmy G is the Alex Smith to Trey Lance's Patrick Mahomes, or at least I know San Francisco is thinking so. All Jimmy does when he's healthy is put up great efficiency numbers and win a lot of games, yet the majority of people think he sucks. Despite my respect for his handsomeness, I don't think Jimmy is a great quarterback. He has jittery pocket presence and is physically limited, but he's a solid quarterback who can win you a lot of games, like Alex Alex Smith. 2021 just reinforced the notion that Jimmy is a classic low-volume, high-efficiency game manager. He's also extremely underrated when it comes to converting third downs. Grade C. Jared Goff, Detroit. I gotta admit, I was wrong about Goff. I gave him too much credit for his 2017 and 2018 seasons when the reality is he's a below-average quarterback who sucks really hard when his first read isn't open. It certainly doesn't help Goff that he was traded to arguably the worst situation in the NFL, and that played out on the field this year. He missed 3 games and was really brutal until the very end of the season, winning 3 of his last 4 starts, but all of those games were meaningless. Unless he has Sean McVay in his ear to guide him, Goff isn't going to win you any important games. It speaks to how bad the upcoming draft for quarterbacks is. Detroit will probably stick with him for another year. Grade D-. Taylor Heineke, Washington. A feel-good story who isn't even supposed to be in the NFL, I guess. That's how Hollywood does shit. He started off the season with some strong performances in place of the injured Ryan Fitzpatrick, but his limitations would get exposed as the year went on. He had some really brutal games to drag his numbers down, although I actually enjoy watching him play. He isn't afraid to make tough throws even though he has a noodle for an arm, but still, let's be real. Nobody's afraid to play Heineke, except maybe Tampa Bay. He is good for a few nice throws a game, but that's about it. Grade D. Justin Herbert, LA Chargers. Herbert's 2021 season showed how terrifying he can be and also how much more he has to go before coming close to reaching his superhuman potential. When Herbert was on his game in 2021, there was really nothing else like it, but too many times he had games where either he didn't have as much of an impact as he should have or was just mediocre. It doesn't help matters, his offensive scheme prioritizes a lot of short throws, which is like having a Ferrari and driving it like a Ford Taurus. People are still in the stage with Herbert where they're in awe of his talent, but pretty soon that will wear off, and he'll have to start making the playoffs and winning games. And based on the gifts Herbert has, that's not totally unfair. Just get him a defense, please. Grade B+. Jalen Hurts, Philadelphia. I'm still not sure what to make of Hurts, even though we're now 1 year into his reign as Eagles quarterback. The first thing I noticed about him is he bails a lot from clean pockets, and his accuracy leaves a lot to be desired. Yet he's also a great scrambler and capable of making something out of nothing on any play. The 2021 Eagles didn't win many big games, even though they made the playoffs. Yes, I'm an Eagles fan saying that, and I still don't trust Hurts as a passer. I don't know what his ceiling is. Maybe he's just destined to be one of those quarterbacks who's good enough to beat bad teams, but not good enough to win anything important. Grade C-. Lamar Jackson, Baltimore. It was a season that started off so promising for Lamar in Baltimore, but quickly went down the drain in the second half. Contrary to the previous seasons where he excelled as a front runner and struggled with comebacks, he led Baltimore to several early season comeback wins, which had him once again in the MVP race with Baltimore at 5-1. Then losses happened, then came injuries. Lamar is still not great at reading defenses, as his 16 touchdowns to 13 interception ratio showed, but he remains unmatched as a scrambler. I don't think Lamar will ever reach his 2019 MVP heights again, but when healthy again next year, I think Baltimore will be back to winning a lot of games. But as for 2021, it was disappointing. Grade C. Daniel Jones, New York Giants. It's now official. Daniel Jones stinks and isn't an NFL caliber quarterback. At no point during his 2021 season did Jones ever give off the impression that he's a franchise quarterback the Giants were looking for after drafting him 6th overall in 2019. In fact, all he did was reinforce the notion that he's fragile. With Jones, you have a great athlete who really doesn't do anything well. He doesn't throw touchdowns, he's prone to interceptions, his completions are normally short, he takes a bunch of sacks, and he still fumbles the shit out of the ball. He's a major draft bust, and if New York knew what was good for them, they move on from him. Although, as an Eagles fan, I hope they don't. Grade F. Mac Jones, New England. Jones had an up-and-down rookie year that looks better than it really was due to several reasons, like having an elite defense to carry him, and the rest of the rookie class vomiting all over themselves regularly. Jones actually did look really good towards the middle of the season with New England on a 7-game win streak, but it seems like ever since the 3-pass attempt game versus Buffalo, his play has fluctuated wildly. It remains to be seen whether or not he will become a great quarterback. Based on his play as a rookie, though, I think he will be a solid, not great quarterback in the future. Grade C-. Trevor Lawrence, Jacksonville. Lawrence basically had a free pass to be terrible this year, considering he was a rookie quarterback on a team coached by Urban Meyer, and yet he still managed to be pretty underwhelming, finishing with just 12 touchdowns and 17 interceptions in 17 starts. Because of Lawrence's situation, it remains unpopular to be so harsh when judging him, but you have to remember this is a guy who was hyped up as a generational talent. He's supposed to be able to lift up a terrible team, and far too often it looked like he was just another scrub with the rest of the lowly Jaguars. Hopefully a new coach will get him to reach his potential. Grade F. F. Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City. It was a wild and mostly frustrating season for the wonderkin Chiefs quarterback. Things started off normally for about 4 games, then Mahomes hit a major 8-game slump where both he and the Chiefs offense looked like they'd never seen a football before. Yes, he was hurt by a lot of bad bounces that ended up becoming interceptions, but for the first time in his stellar career, he also didn't feel inevitable like before. Thankfully, he's appeared to right the ship again and was back to putting up GOAT-caliber numbers over his last 5 starts, so the mid-season slump appeared to be just a hiccup, not the new normal. When 4,800 yards and 37 touchdown passes are a down year for you, you know you're on GOAT trajectory. Grade B. Baker Mayfield, Cleveland. Okay, I admit, perhaps I overrated Mayfield coming into this season because I enjoyed the way he threw the ball in 2020. He's had a very up and down career thus far, and in 2021 we saw a lot more of the bad 2019 Baker than the steady and productive 2018 and 2020 Baker. Of course, with Baker there is the issue of how injured he was and how much that hampered his effectiveness, but it turns out Odell Beckham was not the problem in Cleveland. As of right now, nobody knows where Baker will play next year, although I still think Cleveland gives him one more year. Grade D. Davis Mills, Houston. Mills was a pleasant surprise who filled in for Deshaun Weinstein rather admirably as a draft-necked rookie, although to be fair, there was still a bunch of shitty games on his resume. His overall season stats are juiced a bit by 3 games, but still, this was a 3rd-round pick who was supposed to be a backup, and he ended up looking better than the 1st overall pick Trevor Lawrence in an equally shitty situation. I don't think Mills is going to be good or anything, but he should end up having a 10 to 15 year career as a backup spot starter like a Kellen Clemens or Chase Daniel. Grade D-. Kyler Murray, Arizona. In late October, Murray was the MVP frontrunner, and it appeared he had finally broken out in year 3 following 2 solid but not great seasons in the league after being picked 1st overall. Then he choked away a Thursday night game versus Green Bay, then he missed 3 games with an injury, then his play was wildly inconsistent over his last 6 games, as Arizona finished a disappointing 11-6 following a stellar 7-0 start. Fast starts, then slow finishes have been a theme now in Murray's young career, and you just hope he'll be able to find more consistency because he's so fun to watch. Grade B-. Dak Prescott, Dallas. Dak had a strange year. Over the first 6 weeks he was playing at an unreal level and looked like a possible MVP candidate, then he hurt his calf, missed a game, then came back and was never quite the same again. I also can't help but feel like Dak is a guy who is just better when it isn't a big game. He's great against bad teams, and that leads to impressive individual numbers like this year with 37 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, but I still don't trust him in big spots in a big moment. Maybe it's just the fact that he plays for the Cowboys. His drop-off against good teams prevents him from being elite in my opinion. Grade B. Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay. Well, here we are again. Rodgers just finished another stellar year that should see him win his 4th MVP award. It didn't always look this way though, as there were several major obstacles, some self-inflicted, in his way. The first being his dreadful opening day game versus New Orleans, and the other being his COVID fiasco around mid-season. But all that aside, Rodgers was the best and most consistent quarterback in the NFL once again this year, and there's really not much more to say than that. Grade A. Ben Roethlisberger, Pittsburgh. Congrats to Big Ben on somehow finishing another year of absolutely horrible, unwatchable football. Not only was Big Ben horrible to watch, but somehow he still made the playoffs. Isn't that great? He's been washed up for a few years now, but this year was just awful. The Steelers' offense doesn't even bother to look downfield most of the time. Despite his washed-upness, Ben is still able to throw a dime every now and then in crunch time, which is the only reason he doesn't get the worst possible grade. Grade D-. Matt Ryan, Atlanta. Normally in the past, you could pencil Ryan in for about 4,500 yards and 25 touchdowns minimum, but this year in 17 starts, he didn't even reach 4,000 yards and had just 20 touchdowns. Somehow, the Falcons managed to finish 7-10 instead of something like 3-14, largely because of Ryan making clutch throws in big spots, but this is a guy who has never been a physical marvel, and his pocket presence this year was a mess. Plus, his arm looked even weaker than normal. It might be time to move on if you're Atlanta. Grade D+. Matthew Stafford, LA Rams. The big question going into this season was whether or not Stafford could finally reach his potential with Sean McVay to help him, and through 8 games, it looked like he was going to win MVP, or at least be in the running at the very end. Then, over the second half of the season, he regressed back into Detroit Stafford, which is to say he had erratic decision-making and tons of missed throws and interceptions. Big picture though, LA went 12-5, and Stafford finished with almost 4,900 yards and 41 touchdowns, so he had a very good year. Those 17 interceptions are ugly though. Grade B. Tua Tagovailoa, Miami. Hey look, it's the guy Miami took over Justin Herbert. That decision will continue to, perhaps unfairly, hover over Tua's career forever. Tua remains a limited quarterback. He looks good when his first read is open, but when it's not, he appears to panic and loses all control of his senses. We're now 2 years into his career, and while Tua is not actively terrible like some quarterbacks, I still don't know what he's supposed to do well, and I certainly don't have any faith in him winning anything important in his career. Grade D. Ryan Tannehill, Tennessee. It was a strange year for Tannehill. Tannehill. Statistically, he regressed back into Miami Tannehill, but team-wise, he led Tennessee to the 1 seed. His stats will also be impacted by the fact that Tennessee loves running the ball near the goal line, but still, there's no question he had a disappointing individual season regardless, although he did start to pick it up again over the final 3 weeks of the year. I still have no idea how Tennessee got the 1 seed. Seriously, how the fuck did that happen? Grade C-. Carson Wentz, Indianapolis. Wentz's season can be divided into 3 parts. Part 1 was the first 5 games where Indy went 1-4 and Wentz looked underwhelming. Then Part 2 was the next 10 games where Indy went 8-2 and looked like a potential dark horse title contender. Then Part 3 was the final 2 games of the year where Wentz looked horrible to finish up at 9-8 and missed the playoffs. Wentz had a nice touchdown-interception ratio, but his ceiling now is basically as a game manager you can't win games throwing a lot with. At least he showed that he wasn't quite as bad as his 2020 season. Grade C-. Russell Wilson, Seattle. It was an extremely disappointing year for Russell Wilson. He started off 2-3, then he got hurt to basically miss 3.5 games, then he came back probably a little too early from his injury and looked terrible, then finally started to pick it up again and looked like the old Russ over the final 3 games. In the end, Russ's final stats look pretty much like they always do, and when healthy, he's still one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but this year was just a complete waste of his prime years. Grade C+. Zach Wilson, New York Jets. Hey, remember when I said like 1,000 times that it's illegal for the New York Jets to have a good quarterback? Well, Zach Wilson helped prove me right once again this year. Not only did he suck while he was on the field, he also missed 4.5 games to injury, proving he also lacks durability. Hooray, Jets. Wilson is a guy who's going to continue to suck in the league, but he will get infinite chances, much like his Jets predecessor, Sam Darnold, because he was drafted really early thanks to 1 year of good play against a bunch of community college kids at BYU. Shame. Grade F.